Something mauled a kid. I don't know what it was, still don't, to be honest with you. What I do know is I will be dealing with this until the day I die. I got the call a few months ago in the fall. I'm a park ranger, and while the brighter side of the job has you talking to happy families, helping send the wildlife back to areas safe from harm, there's a lot to this career that can take a toll on you. This was one of them. I pulled into a clearing of a forest in New Hampshire. White pines and firs as far as the eye can see. Autumn made the hue of leaves turn to a carnival of colors as red maples glowed in the sunlight of midday. It was walks like these that made me take this job in the first place. I even wanted to be a park ranger when I was a child. Back when I thought all you did was get lost in the woods, hanging out with bears, stealing baskets. It had a way of making you forget it all, taking in the view. Almost made you forget what I was heading towards. The crime scene was at the end of a rocky ravine. Trickles of water spattered on the floor, a backdrop to the poor kid covered in a bloody tarp. I will spare you the details, but I saw the photos sent for the report, even saw the boy myself. It was awful. Whatever did this ate its fair share. Everything not consumed came in tears with ill intent, scattering his remains around the woods. The animal must have taken its time shredding him to pieces. If there is a God, I hope that boy died quickly. The more I read from the coroner's report, however, the less I think it's likely. The parents were there to identify the body. The mother's screams seeing her child like this could be heard for miles. It sounded like gutting her alive was preferable to the pain she suffered now. Ugly crying with snot dripping as a sad husband stood by, him using whatever strength he had left to hold her up, back from grabbing the pieces of her boy. Federal officers came in to assist us. All of us there were doing the best we could to ignore her screams of agony and get to work. Photos, collecting evidence, and the like. Believe it or not, people think we don't care. Unfortunately, most of us do. I even know how easy it would be for it to be your nephew or brother in that spot. Seeing his face ripped on the floor, it can keep you up at night. That doesn't matter though. The parents crying would be far more distraught if they saw you weeping too. So you bite your lip, smoke, have a quick cry in the car when no one's looking. Otherwise, you just get back to work. In the middle of the commotion, I saw my old boss. He's an older man, stone-cut face from the wind, over years of hiking. A stocky build with broad shoulders, yet held by the hunched, curving spine of a man who could say he was too old for this. The potbelly earned from long hours looking over files at the local diner hung over his pants. Longer hours were spent drinking a fifth in his car to keep the nightmares away. He looked over the scene with that gravelly face deep in thought. O'Connell. I waved him down, stepping around the photographers and family to reach him. Jameson, good to see you. He gave me a nod and turned away from the scene. I followed after as it was clear he had something to tell me, away from the mourning couple near. There was something to show me as well. He pulled a manila folder from his wool-lined jacket and handed it to me. Looks like you're moving up in the world. This your jurisdiction now? Yes, just moved me over to Hillsborough. What are you doing over here? I thought you worked back in Concord. I took the folder from his hand. I had a hunch of what was in it and I wasn't looking until he asked me to. I do. A long time ago this was where I started. Back when you could have a beer at lunch and nobody would bat an eye. I got a call about the situation and knew I had to come. This isn't the first time a kid's been taken. I opened the folder and sure enough there it was. Black and white photos of missing children in the woods. Ripped to pieces, entrails strung among the trees. Viscera which even in the faded ink was enough to make you sick. My old boss continued. We've taken trips to find it. No one's gotten a confirmed sight of the thing, let alone a kill. Sent 30 men, 50 yards apart with enough ammo to put down an elephant. All we got was 2 casualties and a scream that still gives me nightmares. The old folks thought it was some kind of demon, a curse on the white man for what our ancestors did to the natives when he sent them on the trails of tears. Can't say I blame them. I've seen how they live out west. We shipped blankets full of smallpox and slaughter. They send a monster in return. You sound like you believe it. I tried to joke, yet any humor fell flat on the stone face that glared with a knowing tired. He stepped closer, pointing at the photos, staring into my soul unblinking. I had to bury those children, put on the rubber gloves to pick up the bits. Parents didn't have the stomach for it and couldn't afford a coffin. The fear in those dead eyes haunt me in my dreams. Now if you don't want to do the same, here's what I recommend. He gave me a list of instructions, the mother sobbing behind us now turning to an exhausted whimper. My pickup drove deep in the woods in wake of a setting sun. The camper shell and some tie-downs kept the load I was hauling, as even then it bounced while I drove down the beaten trail. The farther I went, the less it looked like a road at all. First it was a lane, then it was a footpath, then there was none at all. I hopped out of my vehicle as the sky turned from crimson to a cool blue, the last vestiges of light shimmering in the trees. I thought I was lost despite following his directions with certainty. 50 miles off the highway you follow the runner's trail. When it ends, take a look around. If the woods are ready for you, they'll make room. I didn't know what he was talking about. Anyone else would have written him off as a loon. He trained me well, however. Back when I was fresh out of high school kicking myself over a girl, he showed me the trails, taught me all the rules, even showed me how to shoot. My father died in the desert back in Iraq. This old man was closest thing to a dad I had. All in all, I owed him a little faith. I looked back at the gifts he left in my front seat. A pack of smokes and a flask with a small note unfolded. Reading it over again, I felt a mix of pride and pity emanating from his words. "I'd go with you, kid, but I'm too old. Seen too many corpses of my own. Just do exactly as I told you and you'll be alright. Help yourself to these when you're done. Congratulations, kid, you're going to need them." I looked around, playing with the pack of smokes. I flipped the lucky cigarette upside down like my uncle showed me when I was young. Third from the left. We all know smoking is terrible for you. Even so, it's funny the things that old men leave to those behind them. I looked up, just about to head back thinking this was for nothing. Sure enough, however, I found what he was after. The thicket in front of me, a wall of saplings and branches now had a break. It started small, yet as the sun went down and wind began to swell, the branches creaking as they gave way with all manner of twists and turns. It started slow enough you would have mistaken it for just the wind. In minutes, however, the way was clear. The very grass and weeds lay down along the path, inviting me further in. I hopped back in my truck and drove slow. I barely pressed the gas as the clearing squeaked me inside. I always heard the forest was alive, a great organism among the cells of bark and pine. I thought he was drunk, yet the old man was right. The woods made way to let me in. At the end of the path, I found a clearing hid from civilization. There in my high beams was a cement flight of stairs. No debris from a house undone. No foundation to explain it being there. A lone flight of stone steps railed with an iron banister curling into the night above. The steps ended sharp as they reached into the sky, broken beams of iron pointing like curled fingers to the stars glimmering high above. The air had a severance to it, like stepping before an ancient temple. My hands shook as I stood before the stairway. Nothing prepared me for what I'd gotten into, and yet keeping my composure I walked around to open up the back. A corpse of a whole pig lay stretched across the truck bed. Its stomach hung open and flaps gutted as its blood seeped onto the tarp below. With all the strength I could muster, I pulled on the tarp as it slid across the bed of my vehicle. It took 5 minutes before my efforts answered, with the heavy thump of the carcass landing in the woods. Thank God the stink was minimal, the heat from the vehicle only beginning to let it turn. I dragged it still further before the steps, those stairs drawing me in with a strange magnetism, inviting to see them more as the contrast of that cold stone was so stark to the woods around. Without thinking, my hands even reached for it, yet the old man's words echoed in my head back from when I started. He was half drunk on a night watch for poachers back then, me too green to find it odd or even care. When he drank, the demons would come to scare him, or maybe they haunted him still, the man only drawing from his flask to numb their fingers on his shoulders. In one of his rants he told me plain, "If you ever see a flight of steps here, don't even think of touching them. You'll never leave the woods alive." He pulled deep from the very flask now sitting in my car, muttering to himself, "I am sorry, Phil. I shouldn't have left you there to die. I never questioned it then." Now I saw everything with a cold certainty. I snapped back to my senses, pulling my hand away. I climbed in my truck, headlights glaring over the pig carcass before stairs that felt more like an ancient altar. I should have left like I was told. Leave the pig in front and don't come back till winter. Those were my instructions. That dead kid was still inside my mind, however. The sad look in my friend's face as remorse weighed on his soul. I wanted to give those parents peace, every one of them. My hands gripped firm the weight of a cold iron, a black and gold revolver with a caliber large enough to kill a bear. I waited for that predator to snap at my bait, sure I was the one to put him down. I turned off my engine, quiet to lure him in. For an hour, I rolled my thumb along the chamber of that gun, waiting for the revenge I would take for all the murders it left behind. So sure that I would be be their avenger, certain that my act was one of justice and not of pride. It's funny, I only ever shot that thing at cans. The loudest scream I ever heard shattered the glass around me. My alarm blared, filling those woods with the chaos that ensued. I screamed, covered in the broken bits of my windshield, but I did not run away. I did not cry or cower. Terrified still, my actions were that of pure adrenaline. Stepping out of the safety of my vehicle, I screamed into the night, raising my firearm, blind and deaf to all that ensued. I had no idea where it came from, yet I fired that pistol in those woods. Again and again and again. Smoke from the burning powder filled my nostrils. Flash from a hot barrel, blinding as echo and recoil had me stumble. My ears rang as the blasts mixed with the siren now behind me. I fired until my chamber went dry, and that was when it hit me. I turned to see an open hand of black across my face. Its claw wisped like smoke and shadow, its color making even the night around us look bright in its comparison. The heavy thump of its strike knocked me down as though I'd been a child. My skull cracked against the ground, and all went black around me. When I awoke, there was blood across my eyes. Everything was in pain as the world spun in my concussion. I reached for my face out of instinct. As its painful sting awoke me, my fingers felt wet meat, dripping with crusted blood. I sat up unsure why I could not see. One eye was full of haze, and other I could not open. It wasn't long till I discovered I had no eye at all. The carcass was gone. Whatever that thing was had spared me, yet did not leave me unharmed. A warning to remember my hubris came in the surgery room, hours after crawling into my ride finding my way home. 4 long fingers on an open claw cut across the left side of my face. The index took my eye as its smallest left a scar across my neck, the last missing the vein that surely would have killed me. Forever I will be ugly. The scars from the flesh it tore, unable to heal little more than the 4 canyon scrapes, grinning like a Glasgow smile. I still work, still walk through those woods, still even make that drive once every season to that forbidden staircase, dragging a pig or deer sometimes onto the dead grass that lay before it. Now I treat the place with the reverence it deserves, leaving whatever roams these woods to its eternity. Ever since, there hasn't been a single mauling, just as there wasn't one in the years before. Some might call it sacrifice, some ritual to appease an ancient god. Me, I don't know what to think. I just don't want to see any more dead kids. Thank you to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacey, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I look forward to making more content for everyone.